Hello, welcome to the Central Wisconsin Book Festival. Tonight we have Gregory Renz presenting, and before we welcome him to the stage, I'd like to read off some of this year's 2024 Book Festival supporters. Support for the 2024 Central Wisconsin Book Festival was provided through the Marathon County Public Library, Portage County Public Library, the McMillan Memorial Library, the Community Arts Grant Program of the Community Foundation of North Central Wisconsin, with funds provided by the Wisconsin Arts Board, a state agency, the Community Foundation, and the B.A. and Esther Greenheck Foundation. Support also provided by the Merrico Foundation, Reuter Ware Law Firm, Center for the Visual Arts, the Portage County Public Library Foundation, the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point Libraries, Yankee Bookstore, Bound to Happen Books, Sojourn Booksellers, and Peking Restaurant. And now, please give a warm welcome to Gregory Renz.
All right, well, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it. So a little history about how I got to this point in my writing career. I spent 28 years on the Milwaukee Fire Department. And of course, over those 28 years, had a lot of experiences, worked with a lot of really colorful characters, and worked in the inner city of Milwaukee, a place we call the Core, which is kind of a unique setting. So I had story, character, setting. Everything you need for a novel, right? There's only one minor thing that I didn't have, and I didn't know a lick about creative writing. Well, at least I was smart enough to take courses through the University of Wisconsin in Madison in creative writing. Went to workshops all over the country, conferences. I kind of came to this gig late, so I thought I need to learn as much as I can as fast as I can. So did all that, and after only 10 years of courses, conferences, workshops, I published my first novel. And I'm kind of glad that I took my time with that first novel. My mentor said it's kind of it's an important story about race. Really opens your eyes to what life is like in the inner city of Milwaukee. So my mentor, Christine Desmet at the University of Wisconsin, said, make sure you take your time with this and make sure it's good. You want this to reach a wide audience. So I did. So after 10 years, it finally got published. And thankfully, after taking all that time, when it came out, it won a bunch of awards. Won 2 International Book Awards, Midwest Book Award, and IAN Novel of the Year Award. So thankfully, I took the time. I mean, I could have spent 10 years and it could have turned out really bad. And it's like, okay, I just wasted 10 years trying to learn how to write. But no, it did really well. And it was really satisfying. And I got to share a lot of stories on my book tour, which is really what firefighters love doing. Storytelling is part of the culture of the fire service. That's what we do. A good portion of the day is we entertain each other with stories, and these stories get better over time. I've worked with some really, really amazing oral storytellers who could hold your attention for hours on end. I think they intimately knew story structure, but probably could not write a proper sentence. But listening to them, I learned a lot about storytelling, which was really a gift. So when I got to the point where I thought I might want to be able to put some of these stories on the page, I was able to lean back on some of that storytelling that I learned from these people. And initially when I got started with those courses, I was thinking, what the hell were you thinking? It's like all of the assignments were coming back, all marked up in red. Greg, you really need to work on your punctuation, syntax, your point of views all over the place. But these stories are so gripping. Keep writing. So that's why it took 10 years, because I'm probably a slow learner anyway. So so that book did really well. Beneath the Flames is the debut novel, came out in 2019. Loved by the Amazon reviewers, which isn't always the case. It's got, well over 200 reviews, just about all 5-star reviews. I can't find a negative comment. And you're not really supposed to read these things because you get a big head, but I had to. So it was very validating to see that even readers who I didn't know at all really loved the story. So after this one did so well, I got to the point where it's like, you know what, I think I probably need to write another book. But this was a couple years later, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to write. I really didn't want to write another firefighting story. But why did I write this second one? Well, I had so many of the readers just pleading with me, please revisit these characters. I love these characters, and they love the setting. They love so much about it. I thought, okay, that maybe. Well, I had one lady actually tell me at one of the book talks, she said, you know, I read a book a week. Your book is the first book I read where I went to bed praying for those characters. They were so real to me, and I cared so much for them. For a writer, I don't think it gets much better than that. So I had the love of the characters, and I thought, maybe I could write another firefighting story. But what really turned me into deciding that I really should write that were all the first responders that came to me after during my book talks and shared how they were so glad that I wrote a book that showed what our jobs were really like. Not the glamorized Hollywood version, but the gritty version. The trauma we deal with on a daily basis, especially in an inner city firehouse, and how that affects us emotionally and affects our mental health. And so I had people coming up sharing stories that they had never shared with anybody, because the book kind of opened them up to that, and they knew that they could share these stories with me. So I was hearing stories from people that oh man, you really need to talk about this stuff. So, I had one fella say that, he went to the second floor to check the second floor for occupants, found a lady lying on the floor. And it's almost pitch black. You really can't see much. So when he went to pick the lady up, he found a young child underneath her. She was trying to protect her child from the fire, and they were both gone. Another fellow told me about a really horrible fire in Milwaukee many, many years ago. I was not there, where they had 14 casualties. And he said they were going into this burning house and pulling out body after body, children, men, women. And he said when he got outside and saw all those bodies on the lawn, he said that imprinted on his brain. He said, I can't get over it. He said, I wake up at night. I haven't slept in 20 years. I wake up in a cold sweat. My heart's pounding. And so, I'm hearing story after story about this. And I was on a podcast in Texas with a writer who was also once a firefighter. And we started talking about how trauma affects us on the job. And he was sharing his journey with PTSD and how he almost took his own life. And he was coming very, very close to it. He went through psychoanalysis, the talk therapy, which he said kind of took the edge off for a while, but then his brother died and he went right back down the hole, just down that dark hole. And a friend of his told him, he said, you really need to go talk to this person over at the University of Houston, I think it was, that's doing this research with therapy for first responders and veterans, and it's called EMDR, Eye Movement Desensitization Reprogramming. And he said, within 2 weeks of that therapy, he said the cloud lifted. He said it was miraculous. It saved my life. So when I heard that, I thought, oh, you know what? I got to look more into this. And his wife relayed to him, and he relayed to me, that she told him, she said, after reading that book, I realized what you were going through. Now, they'd been married for many years on the job. It's like, why didn't she know what he was going through? Well, I know, because we don't talk about it. We talk about the good ones. We talk about the funny ones. We don't talk about the tragedies. And we really do need to talk about those tragedies. And that's what I didn't realize how prevalent it was until I went on that book tour and started hearing first responders sharing their stories with me. And, one of them that really stuck out too was this lieutenant came up after one of my talks, and he said, you could see the pain in his eyes. And he said, that stuff you're talking about, he said, I'm dealing with that. And he said, I don't know what to do about it. He said, if I go for help, my crew's not going to trust me anymore. So, I'm not a therapist, so I just said, I'm not a therapist, but why don't you tell me about it? So he started sharing his story, and it was pretty tough, pretty dark, and I said, yeah, you know what, you really do need to get some help for this. And I said, when you do that, you just might open the door to some of your crew members who are also dealing with the same stuff, and now they'll feel free to go for therapy, or at least talk about it. I stopped talking just about the good stuff and the funny stuff, but the stuff that really, really bothers us. So, hearing that, after I heard that, I said, you really do need to go for therapy. And he said, I think I knew that, but I really needed somebody like you to tell me that. He said, I will go for therapy. Now, I haven't heard from him. I hope he did. So with all of those things going on, I thought, you know what? I really do need to write another book about firefighting, because I need to explore this therapy, and I need to explore just how the trauma that we experience is really affecting so many first responders, police, fire, EMS, and veterans. And I don't even think you have to be in any of those services to suffer PTSD. Could be a family event, losing a family member, anything like that. And I think by putting that therapy into a novel, it shows you use the power of storytelling to pull people in. If you just told somebody, yeah, this EMDR therapy really works, might take it. But now you get into a novel and you're really involved in it. You're loving the characters, and now you're seeing this character go really through hell, and then see that there's some hope there. There's some hope with this therapy. I mean, there again, that's the power of fiction, I believe. And so bringing that to life, I thought, was really important. And I got to mention, I mean, that's not the whole story. There's a whole lot more to the story, but I wanted to have that as a sidelight. So, I mean, in this story, there's romance. The protagonist in this story is a 56-year-old fire captain, and the first one was 22-year-old Mitch. So we have a coming-of-age story versus a end-of-career story dealing with PTSD. And so that's really where I wanted to go with this one. So you have this older captain who is pretty much hated throughout the fire department. And so I'm writing an unlikable character, which can be very challenging as a writer. But early on, you start having empathy for him. At least I hope you do. And you see some of the things he's been through. And as you get more and more into it, you go, yeah, why wouldn't he be, a son of a gun? And so I really wanted to explore his journey versus Mitch's journey of enlightenment. And in the end, I thought, yeah, it came together. And so, when the book finally came out, it also covered human trafficking and gang warfare, some big issues in Milwaukee. And even the voucher school system gets pulled into this, which is kind of a big issue. I don't say whether it's good or bad. I just present the questions and let people decide which way they want to go. So the book came out September 1st. And there again, when I back up just a little bit, when I decided I wanted to write this book, when I sat down at my desk, it's like I was terrified, because I thought, I forgot how to write. Because I've not done any writing in 2.5 years plus. And I didn't realize that if you don't exercise that creative side of your brain, it goes to sleep. And it's like I thought, I spent 10 years learning how to write, and I think I forgot it all. It's like, darn. And I really was. I was terrified. But thankfully, I'm kind of on, I think I'm very persistent. But my wife would say that it's more stubbornness than persistence, and she's probably right about that. But anyway, thankfully I was persistent, because I would not give up on the second book, because I realized how important it was. But man, was it hard to get going again. It's like, I will never stop writing for that length of time again. For any writers out there, don't stop writing. I mean, you can take a few days off here and there, but to take a couple of years off, it's going to be really hard to get back into it. So it took a good 2 months before I really got back into the story started coming to life. The characters came to life. So, I mean, the upside was that I was still using a lot of characters from the first book in the second one. So it's really a companion book. It's just that I have different protagonists and I have different storylines. So I had a lot of characters that were already in my head that I knew. I just had to develop a couple more, and that would be my protagonist and his love interest, who's a retired fire captain. And kind of an interesting thing that the two of them would come together, because normally fire and police departments are kind of not the most friendly towards each other. So, but for them it was, they tend to, yeah, well, I can't wreck too much about the story, but anyway, that's kind of the storyline. So when the book came out, I've got some really nice reviews from other authors. Jerry Apps gave me a really nice review. He's a phenomenal guy. I also had, not Nick, but Nick did my first book. But I had a couple of other, John Didakis is another one that reviewed it. But the thing is, with people like that, they're going to be nice. So it's like, I still had this fear. It's like, is this any good? Because us writers are all gripped with just chronic self-doubt. I'll guarantee you, it's like every writer I know, it's like, it doesn't matter how many books you've published, how many accolades you've gotten. It's like every new book comes out and you're questioning whether it's going to be any good. At least the ones I've talked to. I think the writers that tell you how good they are probably aren't. At least that's my experience. So the one review that every writer or most writers wait for, because they can be brutally honest, is the Kirkus reviews. And so I was waiting for that one, because that was the one, because if they don't like it, they'll tell you. It's like, do not bother buying this book, and they can get real nasty about it. So I'm waiting for that. When it came, it was like, here it was. So this is from Kirkus. 2 seasoned firefighters and a police captain try to save young girls from a dangerous gang. Behind the hard-boiled, tough-talking cop and firefighter stereotypes, there are numerous layers of complexities that touch on real psychological and social issues. Complex, fast-talking characters add intensity to this action-laced thriller. Readers will be glad to be along for the ride. Okay, now I can go out and I can promote this book without feeling guilty. So one of the things I'd like to share was a note that I received from a fire captain, just explaining how moved he was by the first book, and that was another reason why I had to write the second one. And this note just sealed it for me that this is a really important issue, is the mental health of first responders. And his note said, I shed tears reading this book, but your ending really blew me away. It's a powerful book for anyone. It was especially powerful for me, and I think will be likewise for our brothers and sisters in the fire service. I appreciate how your story presents the topic of PTSD. I had a tough time near the end of my career. Once I accepted and understood my own pain, I started seeing it in the eyes of our most senior guys. It continues to be a challenge for me. Your story has been serious therapy, and like therapy, it's not always easy but healing. The themes of risk, loss, and redemption are universal, and they apply to the stories of firefighters everywhere and strike deep chords in me. You handle these themes with the touch of a veteran writer. As I pass the unlikely landmarks only we firefighters see, I think of problems that will never be solved. The vacant lots where we risked it all in a house fire, alleys that were the scenes of murders, homes of suicides, and intersections where we pried bodies from cars. The scenes of so many calls where we met the devil in the dark. We carry that darkness in a corner of our hearts. Your book helps open a window to that corner, letting the light of day disinfect and heal us. So, like your image of leaves in a flowing stream suggests, there's hope, things to acknowledge and let go of. Thanks. I know this book will be both appreciated by and good for the fire service. I think it will give civilians real insight into the weights so many of us carry. Wow, if that isn't, enough of a motivation to write that second one, I mean, it's like, obviously, it's touching people. So, yeah, I had to do that. So, how about, I'm going to read a scene from the second book. And you know what? I probably better put my glasses on because the print's a little bit smaller and my eyes aren't so good. So this scene here, let's see, which one am I going to do? Okay, we'll do this shorter one first. So the setup for this scene is Fire Captain Lee Garrison and his crew have just returned to quarters from a fatal car crash where a drunk driver killed 2 young people. Captain Garrison had attacked the drunk at the scene. Lee sat alone in his office, devastated. Why had he let that guy get to him? Losing it like that sickened him. This wasn't the first time he lost it at a fatal car crash. They triggered wrenching emotions from early in his career when he was the cub on Engine 15. They had responded to an auto accident on Fond du Lac Avenue in the early morning hours. As they approached the scene, Lee's stomach jumped. The smashed-in red Toyota Corolla looked like the car of his best friend and classmate from the academy, Brian Peters. The car had been broadsided on the passenger side by a massive white Cadillac with rusted door panels. When they pulled to a stop, Lee ran to the car. He yanked the driver's door open and gasped. Brian was bent over the steering wheel. He gawked at Lee and gripped the top of his head with both hands. "You okay?" Lee asked. "Sorry, Lee, Sorry for what? Are you okay?" And of course the pages got to stick together. Brian glanced at his passenger, lowered his head and sobbed. Lee ducked his head into the car. Blood oozed from a gash on the forehead of the young woman. It was Sherry, Lee's fiancée. Lee looked from Sherry to Brian and back to Sherry. "What are you two?" Lee didn't have to finish the question. The looks on their faces said it all. He yanked Brian out of the car and crawled in. "You okay?" Through shallow breaths, Sherry whispered, "Lee, I'm so..." Her eyes closed. She slumped against the dashboard. Lee's crew helped remove her from the wreckage and laid her on the ground. Lee sat next to her, holding her head in his lap, his thoughts a jangled mess, willing her to take a breath and open her eyes. He ached to have her back. He didn't care she was messing around with Brian. They could work it out. Just please, wake up. He pressed his forehead to hers. With no paramedics, no EMTs, and no CPR training in the fire department during the 70s, all they could do was wait for a rescue squad that carried oxygen, bandages, and a cot, but little else. When Rescue Squad 4 arrived, Sherry's dead body was delicately loaded onto their cot and lifted into the squad. After they pulled away, Lee turned to Brian. "Why? We were just having a good time." Rage crawled up Lee's insides. He clenched Brian by the throat, shaking him hard. "You should be the one in that goddamn cot." Lee's crew pulled him off. Brian gagged while rubbing his throat, then walked away. Lee called after him, "You killed her, you bastard!" The drunk who was driving the Cadillac was taken into police custody. Nobody said anything about Lee attacking Brian. Lee's crew knew Brian and Sherry. What could anybody say? After only 2 years in the job, Lee had worked at countless scenes of tragic losses. In the blink of an eye, lives were forever altered. Now, Lee was a member of that sad fraternity. He never dated again. Okay. Now, I had to share one of my stories from my career. Back in 2004, I was a captain on Engine 24, inner city fire company. Busy company. I mean, we'd get 20 plus runs a day. And so when we got fire runs, it was not that big a deal. It's like you get a couple fire runs a day. Most of the fire runs were false alarms or minor fires, stuff like that. So 2 o'clock in the morning, an alarm comes in for fire in a home on, I think, North 67th Street. So we're on the rig, geared up and out of the firehouse in under 30 seconds. So no matter how minor the run might seem, we take great pride in flying out of the firehouse and getting to where we're supposed to be getting. So we hit Capitol Drive, which is our runway to get to this fire. And it's sleeting out, so the sleet is pounding off the window like a swarm of angry bees. We're slipping and sliding over the slick road. So we're not taking it too fast. And then the dispatcher came on the rig radio and said, "Engine 24, be advised, there's 2 children trapped in a burning basement at this location." So when we heard that, it's like, now the adrenaline starts rising. And I look back at my 2 firefighters in the jump seats, or 2 veterans, and I just looked at them. I said, "You guys hear that?" Just got nods. Normally we kid around a lot on runs and stuff, but not when there's 2 children trapped in a burning basement. And my driver starts pushing a little bit faster, so we're slipping and sliding a little bit more. But he's a veteran, so he's kind of, we need to get there, but if we crash, those children aren't going to make it, because we're going to be the first fire rig on scene. And if we crash before we get there, chances are those children are not going to make it. So we turn onto North 67th Street, and the entire street is loaded with smoke. We cannot see which house is on fire. It's all that moisture in the air from the sleet. The smoke is not rising. So we're kind of working our way down the street, and we're trying to get there fast, but yet if we go too fast and pass the house, we have to circle around and come back, which chances are they're not going to make it. But if we go too slow, kind of a catch-22 here. It's like, how fast do you go? Well, we got about to the middle of the block, and my driver says, "Boss, it's got to be right around in here." So according to the address, we're around the middle of the block. It's got to be in here somewhere. And just as he said that, this lady comes running out of the smoke. She's got a white gown on that's smudged with soot. Obviously, she's been in the fire. And runs up to the rig. I open the door and step out, and she yanks me by the collar. "There's 2 boys trapped in the basement. Please get them out. Please get them out. Hurry, hurry." So I follow her to the back of the house. I'm going to assess it, make those split-second decisions we're called on to make every once in a while. And that's the pressure of the situation. You got to make split-second decisions, and these split-second decisions might determine life or death. But you can't take too much time deciding what you're going to do. Can't call a conference. So we're going to go to the back of the house, and I'm going to make my decision there on how we're going to go about rescuing the kids and attacking the fire. And my 2 firefighters, meantime, they're loading hose onto their backs, and these are veterans. They know what to do. I didn't have to give them any orders on what to do. They've fought hundreds of firefighters. So they're laying the line. They're going to lay the line to the back door. They know how to do that. So I get to the back door, and my stomach clenches. The thick, black, gray smoke gushing from that basement. There's no way those children can be alive down there. Just no way. It's like, ah. And just as I'm thinking this, the lady says, "Those 2 boys were hollering for help right before you got here. Please get them out, sir. Please don't let them die down there. They're all I got." Well, first rule of firefighting is you never go into a burning building alone. Second one is you should have a charged hose line in case the fire flashes over, so you can protect yourself. Well, when she said that, I really didn't even think about it. It's like, I got to get down there now. The screw protocols, I cannot wait for my crew with the lines. I got to get down there. If they got a chance, since they were calling for help right before we got here, maybe I can get them out in time. So I crawled down the stairs, and I've got a breathing apparatus, a face mask on, so I've got fresh air, but it is pitch black. Cannot see a thing down there. So I work my way down the stairs, get to the bottom of the stairs, and call out their names. She had told me their names were Brandon and Brenton. So I call out their names, and then I stop to listen for just the slightest sound of life. I don't hear anything but the crackle of fire way off to my right. It's like, ah. Well, there's no way that I'm going to leave that basement without those 2 boys. So I'm going to go into search and rescue mode, which is something we train on extensively. What we do is we black out our masks and go into all kinds of different buildings and blindly try to find our way through there. So we're used to this, plus we've fought quite a few fires in Milwaukee. So I'm used to it. It's like, so what I'm going to do is go into search and rescue mode, which means at the bottom of the stairs, I'm going to go straight to the back wall. That's my plan, straight to the back wall, on all fours. I'm going on all fours while I'm sweeping the floor. When I get to the back wall, I'll touch the back wall with my left hand and reach across the floor with my right hand and right leg, and It's keep doing that as I make my way around the basement. That way, if there's a room that's sectioned off, I'll go in that room and I'll come all the way around and come around. It's a real organized way of doing it, but it's slow. I mean, but you have to take your time. Otherwise, you get lost, and you're going to end up just going back and forth across the basement, and you won't even know where you're at. So that's what we do. That's what I'm going to do. And so I start across the basement. I'm going to the back wall, and before I get to the back wall, I get to a bed. Now, that's a good thing because kids will hide under the covers, hide under the beds, sometimes in closets, because they're choking, they can't breathe, so they're trying to hide from the smoke. And so I start rifling through the sheets. It's like, no, not there. I flip the mattress over under the bed. It's like, oh, damn it. So actually, I'm cursing pretty bad by this time. And but anyway, I work my way to the foot of the bed, and I find what's like a large pile of bedding and clothing and stuff. So I start rifling through that pile of bedding and clothing and find what feels like a large rag doll. So I pick this rag doll up and bring his face to mine, and I'm looking into the serene face of a young boy, and I know he's gone because he's limp, lifeless. There's nothing there. It's like, oh, man. So now my crew is coming down the stairwell. I follow their voices to the stairwell and hand the child off to them and make my way back to the foot of the bed, rifle through some more of the clothing and bedding and find a much smaller rag doll. And same thing. It's like he's limp, lifeless. It's like, we've lost two children at this one. It's like, damn. So now by this time another company's coming down the stairs to the hose line, hand this boy off, and we have to still fight a fire and do a full search and rescue of the entire basement because we don't always get good information. There could be an uncle down there, it could be a dog down there. So we always do a full search no matter what people tell us. So we're in search mode, plus we're fighting the fire, and I'm in charge down there. There's a battalion chief now in charge of the upper operation, and I'm relaying the message to him. And so I'm not even thinking about the boys right now because I have to switch modes to firefighting and looking for other occupants. Well, 45 minutes later, the fire's out, smoke is cleared, and we've pulled all the ceilings apart, walls apart, making sure there's no hidden fire. Now it's time to go outside. And now I start thinking about those two little boys and how two little boys lost their lives so senselessly in this horrible fire. And going up the stairs, I know what I'm going to see when I get outside. There's going to be two little bundles covered by bright yellow plastic sheets. The Emmy's going to be there taking information. Police are going to be talking to the neighbors, getting whatever information they get from them. And the family members are just going to be wailing. They're going to be, it's a horrific scene. It just tears your heart out. So I'm going up the stairs, and we get outside, and I go to we turn to the side yard, and I'm trying to process what I'm seeing because this isn't making sense. There's nothing there. Nobody's there. And it's like, where did they take the boys? Normally they got to do all the investigation and all this. It's like, just as I'm trying to process all this, the battalion chief, Tom Jones, comes running across the lawn, comes up to me, says, Engine 24, nice job. Both those boys were resuscitated on scene, and they're on their way to the hospital, and they're conscious and breathing on their own. Oh, yes. I'll tell you what, I couldn't be any feelings better than that. I mean, I don't know what it feels like to catch the winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. I don't think it's as good as that, but I've never caught the winning touchdown in a Super Bowl either, so I guess I really don't know. But anyway, what a phenomenal feeling. So we're high-fiving. We go back to the firehouse, and everybody, the news media comes in, the cameras are coming in, and everybody's sharing their stories with the reporters about what they did there and how miraculous this was, that these two boys were on the verge of death. I mean, they were close to not making it. And, it was just a fun evening, went through all of that stuff, and then things started settling down. And now I had to go back to my office and write the fire report. And I sat down at my desk, and I started going through the events of the evening, trying to get it all in my head set. And I started sobbing because a wave of emotion came over me, and I realized I was part of something far bigger than a firefighter finding two boys in a burning basement, because I was going to go straight to that back wall. Trained on it extensively, fought fires. It's like I knew exactly what I was going to do, where I was going to go, how I was going to do this. But the bed and the boys were way over in that corner. Never missed a step going to that bed. And when I looked at the printout from the time we got there to the time those boys were out of the basement was a little over a minute. That's almost like time stopped. That's almost impossible. Things take a lot longer than that. So when I realized what went on down there, and how I knew something pulled me right to that bed. You know, it wasn't my training and, all of the fires I had fought. Something was in control that pulled me, whether it was their spirit, the hand of God, whatever you might want to believe in. It's like, whew. And that really changed how I looked at life and people, because I realized, whoa, we're connected on more levels than people really realize. And so somehow their spirits and mine connected, and we got together and got them out. So I tried to call Paula in the morning and tell her about this, but I was so choked up. She was saying, what happened? Are you okay? Because I couldn't get it out. I'll tell you when I get home. So I went home and was able to tell her about that. But then over the next couple of weeks, this was 2 weeks before Christmas, then over the next 2 weeks, I started thinking, did we just rescue those 2 boys to put them in a nursing home? With that amount of smoke and carbon monoxide, they could have cognitive issues, serious cognitive issues. And you think about that, but we aren't able to connect with our patients, the HIPAA rules and all that. So I just, you thought about it, but I didn't know how that all turned out. It bothered me. So 2 weeks later, it was 2 days before Christmas, I'm at the firehouse. We're getting ready for lunch, and I'm sitting on a long wooden bench at the kitchen table, and I hear a rustling coming from way down at the end of the hall. And I look back and I see 2 bright lights coming up the hallway, obviously television lights. And in front of those 2 bright lights was the silhouette of 2 little boys running down the hall. The chief stopped them at the door, said, "Boys, these are the men who saved your life that night." And when I looked at the boys, I realized there were no cognitive issues. Just the look in their eye, the way they were moving, the vibrancy, everything was there. It's like, thank goodness. And then the chief pointed at me and he said, "And this is the man who found you in that burning basement." So the older boy, around 8 years old, came up to me, real shy, said, "Thank you for saving my life." And then his 4-year-old brother, give him one of these. And I was sitting, but the 4-year-old looks up at me and he goes, and I looked down at him and I went, because I had a knot in my throat, I could not say anything at that point. So we had a great lunch. This was, like I said, it was 2 days before Christmas. We had taken up collections and bought them a whole bunch of Christmas gifts and everything. Just a wonderful get together. There again, everybody sharing their stories, and the family telling us about their family and all the things going on. Nice tour of the firehouse, and got a lot of pictures. And when they were getting ready to leave, the mom came up and to me and gave me just the nicest hug and said, "You gave me the best Christmas present I will ever get. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't say it enough, thank you." And when I tell a story, and that's why I like to tell a story, I can hear her voice in my ear when I'm telling this story. So what I have to also add is it's important to point out this was not one firefighter making a rescue. This was the resources of the entire Milwaukee Fire Department. Dispatchers giving us really good information. Veteran driver, veteran firefighters, no orders had to be given. I didn't have to slow down at all. They knew exactly what to do. And then inner city paramedics. These people are unbelievable. I mean, these are people who do resuscitations over and over and over again, and having that level of skill at that fire was tremendous. And then the hyperbaric chamber, obviously, to detoxify them. All those things went into saving those boys. And, if any of those things, any part of that chain of actions was broken, they may not have made it. They could have been in a nursing home or not made it. So I look at that, and I don't even know if I can take any credit for it, because when I think about it, I don't think I was in control in that basement. I was just the vehicle. So that's my story from the fire, my career, which does not give me PTSD. Okay, just to give you an idea of what the second book is about, let me read you just a short synopsis. Okay. Beyond the Flames delivers a gritty and intense battle for justice in which the disillusioned Fire Captain Lee Garrison and retired Police Captain Brigid O'Brien, his demanding love interest, join forces to take down a ruthless outlaw motorcycle gang, terrorizing an African-American family in Milwaukee. Haunted by his demons of PTSD from traumatic experiences during the Vietnam War and years of responding to unimaginable tragedies on the fire department, Lee is driven by a newfound sense of purpose when he rescues a young girl from a school fire and discovers her sister is being held captive by the notorious Hell's Disciples gang. With his explosive temper and cunning combat skills, Lee must navigate the treacherous underworld of the Iron Horse Mafia to free the sister and protect her family. But as Lee and Brigid get closer to their goal, they uncover a diabolical scheme that will have a catastrophic effect on the entire inner city community and threaten both of their lives. So that's the synopsis of the second book, which was a little different than the first one. I think for those who have read the first one, it wasn't quite as much of a thriller as this one is. This one really kind of goes into a grittier storytelling, definitely more of a thriller. I do have one more scene I can read, and then I think we're about done here. So let me read this. So this scene here is Captain Lee Garrison is responding to a school fire with his driver, Crusher, and 3 firefighters. So you recognize some of those people from the first novel. Of course, that was quite a while ago, so maybe you don't. As they pulled out of quarters, a massive cloud of dark, billowing smoke was visible in the distance. Crusher said to Lee, "We'll be first in." "Thank God it's Saturday." Crusher pushed the rig hard, racing up the opposite lane of traffic like a shiny red 20-ton stock car, blasting the air horn at drivers who refused to get out of the way, and swerving around cars with inches to spare. When they arrived on the scene, dark, gray, and black smoke belched from every crack and crevice of the aging structure that had once been a grocery store. Thick smoke curled from under the eaves of the roof and climbed into the crystalline blue morning sky. Snow had already melted off the roof. Lee turned to his crew in the back jump seats. "Ralph, Kenny, get a line laid out to that side entrance. Anderson, come with me. Let's see what we got." Lee assessed the building as they circled it. Concrete block walls and no windows for ventilation or for making entry. They were slowed by heavy brush and knee-deep snow at the back of the building. The smoke was building fast. Lee called into his radio, "Ralph, don't make entry until I check this out. I don't like the look of that roof." As they came around the back, an immense bald black man stumbled out a side door, hacking and wheezing, his white shirt smudged with soot. He grabbed Lee by the flaps of his smoke-stained yellow turnout coat. "My little girl, she's trapped in there. I couldn't get to her." "Anyone else?" "Just her." "Where?" "Last classroom, back of the school." Anderson, go lay out the line." Anderson ran back toward the rig. The large man said, "Please hurry, it's real bad in there." Lee said into his radio, "I'm going in, got a little girl trapped in there." "Hang on, boss, we'll be right there." "Can't wait, back me up." Lee pulled on his facepiece, positioned his leather helmet, reached around his back and opened the air valve on a compressed air bottle. "Screw the rules," he thought to himself. "There's a terrified little girl in there." He crawled into the blackness on all fours, staying below the heat. He ran his gloved hand along the wall, searching for the hallway leading to the back of the school. How in hell did this fire get going so fast? Lee wondered. His knees grew warm. He called into his radio. "Ralph, we got fire in the basement. Watch yourself." "Damn it, wait for us." Lee crawled deeper into the school. There was no turning back. He pounded the floor in front of him with his axe as he moved along the hallway to ensure it was sound. He called into the darkness, "Little girl, fire department, where are you?" He thought he heard something coming from far down the hallway, but couldn't make it out. He moved faster than he should to get to her, praying the floor wouldn't collapse and plunge him into the flames. He heard muffled coughing and gagging. He ran his gloved hand along the wall and found an open door. "You in there?" From inside came a high-pitched squeal, followed by coughing. Lee crawled toward the fading coughs. He moved across the classroom, sweeping his hand over the floor, slamming desk after desk out of the way. He bumped into a large one, felt around it, and found the girl huddled underneath. He took one glove off and ran his hand over thick, tight braids of the little girl's head. "You're going to be okay. I'll get you out of here." Her gasping breaths were shallow. Lee took a deep breath. lifted the helmet from his head and slipped off the facepiece, placing it over the girl's face. Her breathing deepened. He snugged the helmet back onto his head. Early in his career, Lee fought plenty of fires without a mask. It was macho to be a smoke eater back in the day. He knew he could last several minutes in this toxic atmosphere by keeping his nose and mouth close to the floor. The girl's breathing returned to normal. "Are you with me?" Lee asked. He felt her head nod. "Good. Now I'll need you to hold that mask to your face while I help you crawl out of here. Do not stand up. Understand?" She nodded again. Lee draped his arm over and around her waist. They crawled along the floor, retracing the way down the ink-black hallway, staying low to protect the girl from the searing heat over their heads. A low rumbling intensified into a deafening crash. He hunched down, covering the girl with his body. Then, eerie silence. They continued crawling down the hallway toward the side entrance. Light from an open hole in the roof illuminated a maze of smoldering rafters and roofing that blocked their way. Lee struggled to pull the heavy rafters loose, gasping when bolts of pain flared down his back to his left leg. The rafters didn't budge. An orange glow erupted from the center of the pile. The mask muffled the little girl's cries. Okay. Any questions? Looks like we're coming to the end here. So, you guys got any questions about my career, about either book, anything that I said this evening? If not,
Did you, so obviously you have a lot of experience to draw on as far as firefighting scenes, with some of the other things in the second book that you mentioned, like human trafficking, that sort of thing. What sort of research did you have to do to be confident enough to write about it in a truthful way?
right. So, I mean, living in Milwaukee, especially in a fire department and with the police department, we were very aware of the human traffic that was going on. In fact, you would see, these young women on the streets, and we'd get called to situations where they were overdosed or things like that. And so you learned the connections there. And as far as the human trafficking with the gangs and the inner city street gangs were big into that. And also one of the biggest traffickers were the outlaw motorcycle clubs in Milwaukee, which would be the Milwaukee Outlaws, did a lot of trafficking. And if any of them listen to this, they probably would not be happy to hear that. But, yeah, so I mean, we were very aware of it, kind of knew what was going on. And so I just had to fill in the blanks as far as, how it worked and what happened here. And in reading the book, you'll find a lot about that. What I did have to do a lot of research with was the EMDR therapy. Because when I first heard about it, obviously I wasn't a therapist. I didn't really know a whole lot about it. And so as I researched it, and the more I found out, I was like, whoa, this is really intriguing stuff. Then a writer friend of mine told me about a therapist down in New Orleans that she knew, who was a good friend, that would probably consult with me. So I got a hold of her, and she was an incredible amount of help consulting with the therapy. There again, I don't go in deep with the therapy, but there are therapy sessions, so I wanted to make sure that I did have that right as far as what went on. And it was kind of neat because as we worked through the scenes, for the most part, she said, yeah, you've got a good feel for what's going to go on there. And she'd point out a few things. And then she said, I'm actually working with a firefighter right now, and I love a couple of those lines in your therapy that your therapist used. I'm going to use them on my firefighter. So it's kind of cool. So, okay, you're going to use that in therapy. So, yeah, I mean, there's always a certain amount of research that goes into this, and, asking people, what they were involved in. So, yeah, thanks for that question. Anybody else? That's always a question that comes up. The question is, what am I going to write next? So, like I said, I really wasn't going to write this second book until I had all this stuff coming at me that just demanded to be written. And the book I was going to write for my second book is a book or a story that takes place in 1970 in Madison. the summer of 1970, you had the Kent State shootings that started not in Madison, but the Kent State shootings in the spring, and then the Sterling Hall bombing in the fall. And I thought, it's a really provocative time period. And yeah, I was around at that time. I'm old enough to have been there, and I wasn't a protester, but I was in the middle of a lot of it, because just the excitement of a young guy. It's like, what's going on here? You just wanted to be around it and see what's going on. I didn't break anything, I didn't throw anything, but I was just being in the middle of that, and I thought, you know what? It's like, especially in these days and times, I would really like to explore the mob mentality and what people are willing to do when they get into a mob. Things they would never do on their own, and things that afterward, it's like, do people feel bad when they get caught up in this? And just what happens? And I don't know. There again, it's like, when I write something like this, I don't know the answers. It's like I'm writing through it and I'm experiencing it with my characters. So this second one would basically be centered around a motorcycle club and the anti-war protesters. And the protagonist is from the motorcycle club, and the other protagonist, she is a anti-war protester, and they will fall in love, and their two groups are battling viciously because the bikers really don't like the anti-war protesters. By the way, they're treating their friends and family that are coming back as veterans from the Vietnam War. You know, they're getting spit on, they're being abused, and of course, the anti-war protesters, their whole goal is to end this stupid war so no more soldiers get killed. So they both have good reasons for what they're doing. Do they go too far with, going after each other? And so I thought, yeah, that's something I think that would be very provocative. So I really got to get to work on that. So thanks for that. Anybody else?
One more that I'm curious about. Now that you've gotten through the second book and thinking about a third, what do you know now aside from keeping your chops up by writing constantly, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you were writing the first?
All right, what do I wish I knew when I was writing the first book that I know now? And that's a really good question, because the first book I wrote way too long. I mean, my scenes just went on forever, descriptions went on forever, dialogue exchanges went on forever. So the first draft of the first novel came in at 176,000 words, which is over 600 pages. And I ended up, with my mentors at the UW, editing that down to 100,000 words, which you have to as a debut novel to get any attention at all. People aren't going to publish a 600-700 page book by a debut novelist. No, it's not going to happen. So I learned that I need to write shorter, more concise, the first time even. And so when I wrote the second one, I was at a point where it's like, geez, can I even fill 300 pages? Maybe I'm going too far with this. And I really did. It's like I was writing really short scenes. And so I kind of went too far with that. So I had to start filling in more of the scenes. And I had readers say the same thing. It's like, that happened way too fast. You got to slow down. So yeah, those are the challenges. I mean, and you keep learning. And so, I mean, the first book took 10 years, but I was learning the craft. Second book took 2 years, so I'm moving in the right direction. So I'm hoping maybe third book, 1 year. That'd be great. But it's a challenge. And I plan on, this one was just published September 1st, so I do plan on getting started within the next couple of months. And I already have a developmental editor who you have to sign up like a year in advance to get him to edit your book. I'm on his schedule already, so that's my timeline. I got to have at least a first draft done by then for him to give me a decent developmental edit. So, yeah, it's been quite a journey from retired firefighter, fire captain to author, but what a great journey it's been. Man, oh man, so glad I did that. Okay, well, thank you guys.